patria o muerte.
Episode 3, The Tripolar Trap. 1. The Mathematical Nightmare. There is a reason why empires have always feared threes. It is not superstition. It is geometry. Two powers can balance. Two can deter. Two can stare at each other across an iron curtain, fingers hovering over buttons, and stabilize the world through the sheer, paralyzing terror of mutual destruction. The Cold War was brutal, but it was binary. It had rules. It had a hotline. It had a predictable, terrifying symmetry. But three? Three is not balance. Three is instability disguised as symmetry. Political theorists rarely say this aloud at dinner parties, but strategists know it instinctively. They know it in the pit of their stomachs when they look at the new maps. A tripolar world is the most dangerous configuration a global system can assume. Not because war is inevitable, but because miscalculation becomes rational. In a bipolar world, you know who the enemy is. In a tripolar world, you constantly fear that the other two are talking without you. This is the structure the world sleepwalked into after the Cold War. We celebrated the fall of the Berlin Wall. We toasted the end of history. But while we were distracted by the multilateral fantasy, the beautiful lie that trade would replace tanks, the tectonic plates of power were shifting. The bipolar order collapsed. The multilateral dream failed. And what emerged from the wreckage was not cooperation. It was triangulation. 2. The Triangle of Distrust. USA China Russia. It did not arise by design. No one sat down in a room and planned this. It emerged by default, like a cancer growing in the vacuum of a failed immune system. And here is the tragedy. Each power believes itself to be acting defensively. Washington claims it is upholding the rules-based order, protecting free navigation, defending democracy. Moscow claims it is securing its borders against encirclement, protecting its cultural sphere, resisting hegemony. Beijing claims it is reclaiming its rightful place in history, securing its supply lines, rising peacefully. Each claims to be preserving stability. And each, by doing so, accelerates the collapse of the system it depends on. This is the paradox at the heart of the New World Order. To understand it, you must abandon moral language entirely. Forget good and evil. Forget democracy and autocracy. Those are words for voters. To understand what is happening, you must think like a mathematician. In game theory, a stable equilibrium requires predictability. Two players can model each other. They can run the simulations. They can calculate retaliation. They can internalize the cost of aggression. If I hit you, you hit me, we both die. It is grim, but it works. Introduce a third player, and the equations break. Because alliances become fluid. Because betrayal becomes advantageous. Because waiting becomes dangerous. In a tripolar system, the worst possible outcome is to be the odd power out, the one not currently paired against a rival. If A and B fight, C wins. If A and B ally, C dies. So every actor is incentivized to move first. You cannot wait to be attacked. You must secure your position before the coalition forms against you. Great power conflict does not begin with an invasion. It begins with the fear of exclusion. 3. The three wounds. This is why the new imperial logic is not reactive, it is preemptive. And each of the three powers entered this deadly configuration carrying a different historical wound, a scar tissue that determines how they flex their muscles. The United States emerged from the Cold War victorious, but exhausted. It was a titan with a headache. It inherited the burden of enforcement without the legitimacy of empire. It maintained hundreds of bases, from Okinawa to Ramstein. It upheld alliances it could not abandon but no longer fully understood. It funded institutions that depended on its presence while resenting its power. The result was strategic schizophrenia, dominance without clarity. A superpower that wants to go home but is terrified of what happens if it leaves. Russia emerged humiliated. It was a collapsed empire, a torso with its limbs amputated. It looked west and saw former territories, Poland, the Baltics, Ukraine, now flying the flags of its historical enemies. Its trauma was not ideological, it was spatial. Russia does not think in terms of freedom or markets. It thinks in terms of depth. It measures security in kilometers from the Kremlin. Every border close to Moscow is not a line on a map. It is an open wound. It is an existential threat. China emerged patient. Its century of humiliation was not a chapter in a textbook, it was burned into the strategic memory of every party official. Unlike the Soviet Union, China did not collapse. Unlike the United States, it did not overextend. It watched. It learned. It invested. It waited. 3 powers. 3 psychologies. 1 unstable triangle. 4. The gray zone. World politics in this configuration becomes a series of forced moves. It is a game of chess played on 3 boards simultaneously, where a move on one triggers a crisis on the others. If the United States strengthens NATO to reassure Europe, Russia must respond, or appear weak to its own people. So it moves missiles to Kaliningrad. If China builds a port in Pakistan, the United States must counter, or lose influence in the Indian Ocean. So it sells submarines to Australia. If Russia takes territory in Georgia, China must decide, does it support the violation of sovereignty, which helps its Taiwan claim, or defend the principle of borders, which protects its own stability? No option is neutral. Neutrality itself becomes a strategic liability. You are either with us, or you are a vulnerability waiting to be exploited. This is why the tripolar world produces what analysts euphemistically call gray zone conflict. It is not total war. It is not total peace. It is the muddy, bloody middle. Cyber warfare that shuts down pipelines. Economic coercion that rots an economy from the inside. Information operations that turn neighbors into enemies. Proxy wars fought by mercenaries who don't wear flags. Violence without declaration. War without ceremony. The aim is not conquest, not yet. The aim is positioning. Each move is a test. Each hack, each sanction, each naval drill is a question. What will you do? How much pain can you take? Each response is data. 5. The victim, Europe. Imperialism in this era is quiet, incremental, and deniable. But the underlying pressure never disappears. It builds, like magma beneath the crust. Consider Europe. Europe exists today in a strategic limbo, a wealthy continent paralyzed by its own history. It is militarily dependent on the United States for its shield. It is energetically entangled with Russia for its warmth. It is economically exposed to China for its growth. In a bipolar world, Europe had a role, it was the prize. In a multilateral fantasy, it had an identity, it was the rule-maker. In a tripolar reality, it has neither. It is too large to be ignored. Too fragmented to act as one. Too comfortable to adapt quickly. Ukraine was not a tragedy in this system. It was an experiment. It was a test of response thresholds. A live-fire calibration of pain tolerance. A demonstration of exactly how far borders could be redrawn before the system reacted. The answer was clear, not far enough. Ukraine war shattered the last illusion that territorial conquest was obsolete. It proved that tanks still work. It proved that cities can still be erased. And it sent a signal far beyond Eastern Europe. To Washington, deterrence is expensive. Can you afford it everywhere? To Beijing, patience pays. The West is tired. To every medium power, sovereignty is conditional. You are safe only as long as you are useful. In a tripolar system, the fate of smaller states is sealed long before the first tank crosses a border. They cease to be nations. They become bargaining chips. Taiwan is not a democracy in this logic. It is a variable in an equation about semiconductor supply chains and naval blockades. Latin America is not a collection of cultures. It is a resource basin to be drained. Africa is not a continent of nations. It is a future demographic reservoir to be tapped. This is not cynicism. This is how empires see. Geopolitical realism strips the world of illusion, not humanity. 6. The logic of acceleration. And here is the cruelest insight of all. The tripolar trap makes restraint irrational. If one power slows down to build schools or fix bridges, the other two gain relative advantage. If one respects borders, the others gain access to the resources behind them. If one honors treaties, the others exploit the flexibility of lawlessness. So each empire accelerates. Not because it wants war, but because it fears irrelevance. This is why diplomacy begins to sound unhinged. Why statements contradict actions. Why red lines dissolve into pink suggestions. Everyone is speaking to two audiences simultaneously, their rival and the third observer. Every move says, pair with me, or I will move without you. This is not strategy. It is systemic coercion. And systems like this do not stabilize. They escalate. They vibrate faster and faster until something snaps. Historically, tripolar worlds resolve in only three ways. Collapse. One power implodes internally, like the USSR. The remaining two form a new bipolar order. Hegemony. Two powers merge into a dominant bloc and crush the third. Restructure. A fourth power emerges and changes the geometry of the system. The first leads to chaos. The second leads to tyranny. The third is rare. But not impossible. What makes the current moment unique is that the traditional candidates for a fourth power, Europe, India, Japan, are structurally constrained. Europe lacks unity, it is a choir without a conductor. India lacks cohesion, it is a giant tied down by 1,000 internal threads. Japan lacks demographic depth, it is a rich nation growing old. So strategists assume the outcome is predetermined. They assume the world will settle into a brutal equilibrium between three empires, grinding against each other until one wins. They assume there is no alternative. 7. The hidden anomaly. This assumption is their blind spot. Because it ignores a historical anomaly hiding in plain sight. It ignores a model that doesn't fit the map of 1945, or 1989, or 2020. It ignores a network that once spanned oceans instead of continents. A civilization stitched together by language, law, and navigation. A structure that did not rely on territorial contiguity to function. An empire that did not dominate a hemisphere, but connected them. This possibility does not yet appear in the strategic models running in the Pentagon or the Kremlin. It exists only in dusty archives. In forgotten treaties signed with quill pens. In shared grammars and legal codes that span from Brazil to Angola to Portugal. And it exists in the mind of a woman who understands something the empires do not. She sees the triangle. She sees the trap. And she knows that you cannot escape a trap by playing by its rules. You cannot win the game of three empires by becoming the fourth corner. That just delays the war. The only way to escape the tripolar trap is to change the shape of power itself. Not to join the triangle, but to dissolve it entirely.